Okay, well, I'm Nancy. I'm a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I write it down. I turn it over to a sponsor. I don't eat in between. And absence is definitely the most important thing in my life, without exception. And I came in to these rooms and I hated that mantra and I hated everything about program because I was doing binge maintenance and regular OA. I spent most of my life dieting, on diets and off diets, and 11 and a half years struggling in OA, and I didn't want to do gray sheet. And gray sheet is the easier, softer way for me. I'm an alcoholic with food. It puts a plug in the jug 3 times a day. I get my baba. There's nothing more spiritual than weighing and measuring my food, committing it to a sponsor, turning it over, calling when I have a problem, when the scale breaks or dances or bringing back up. I mean, this grounds me and it's my security blanket. So I am 66, soon to be 67. I got this disease in utero, good addictive stock. I don't want to really go into the drunkalog, but I never felt good enough. That fear, doubt, and insecurity. And even like recording me, it's like, oh no, like who wants to hear me? Like I've spoken before, or I'm not good enough, or I forget what to say. And the fact that I used to eat compulsively and food owned me, and I had a very, very small life. It was my exercise, the Bermuda Triangle. It's the food, the TV, and the refrigerator. And back in the day, I had to get up. My only exercise was getting up to turn the channels on the TV. And I spent a lot of time isolating, and I didn't really know as a food. It was my drug, it was my lover, it was my abuser, but it's a depressant for me. And when I eat, or when I ate certain quantities and the sugar and flour, it set up cravings for more. And I always heard, oh, you don't have willpower, or starting from a young age, oh, it's your metabolism, a slow metabolism. Because I was a private eater, and and in front of other people, I could be a lady, I could eat slow, but get me alone. And I've been thinking a lot about it. And I says, oh, I remember about when I was in college, like I could have one thing from the vending machine, like I had little memories. And then I'm like, oh yeah, but remember when I was babysitting and, when I was grazing, or the my disease started a lot earlier. And, because I kid myself thinking it wasn't that bad. And when I came into OA, I didn't think I was that bad, and I didn't want what you had. And I had heard the message. Somebody actually in my college said she went to OA. I never asked her what she did, but I sort of tried to do what she did. And I got the message, you don't eat between meals, but she never weighed her food. And I never asked her. And then I got to a meeting. I live in the Boston area near the Cambridge meeting. And I probably went to a Cambridge meeting because it was in Harvard Square. And I said, well, I don't really get it, or I don't really want to. And she says, well, there's another meeting tonight. Why don't you go to it? I'm like, I'm not that bad. I don't need another meeting. And today, this is my third meeting. I went to I have a noon meeting. That's a committed meeting that I thought I wouldn't go to, but I actually did go to. And I heard some really great stuff. And I had another meeting and this is a really good way to take care of myself. And when I came into Gray Sheet, kicking and screaming, which, after 11 and a half years of OA, that, clearly, my way wasn't working. I wanted to be abstinent, but I wanted to eat everything in sight. And I went to any length to get my food. And I had stretches of time and peace around the food, but it was more like a diet. And I was very restrictive in my eating. I did the white and light. I had the same protein, the same frozen vegetables. And we weren't supposed to get pleasure out of our food. And, I had to, but I did learn some good things in OA. I learned how to weigh and measure. I learned how, 4.0 equals 4.0. I learned to get to meetings, how to pick up a phone, how to make calls. I took, and go to I learned that I wasn't terminally unique.
That's fine.
Thank you. And I learned that, Yeah, that I'm not alone. Like I still felt like, oh, poor me, like I'm the only one that can't get it. Because in the 90-day community that I was in, you couldn't speak unless you had 90 days. And, I didn't hear people talk about the food. And I also did grains. I actually went to treatment and they told me I needed grains at every meal. And when I went to treatment, it was 4 meals a day. And I'm like, I can't do grains. And I did like half a cup of grains. And I broke several cups with that, and a half a cup of grains is like, really, that's not even a serving. I mean, that's cruel. So I always had that craving, like I had that itch, and it would be I lose weight and then I try and make up on live all the stuff that I didn't do because I was, when I was eating, it was home alone with the shades drawn. I wouldn't pick up my phone. I was a workaholic, and I missed out on a lot of living. And so, you know, Um, OA works for people, a lot of people. I don't want to bash it, but the miracle is I didn't give up. And somebody would say, "Oh, you haven't reached bottom yet," or "I can't believe you're still here." Like I would go to different meetings in different communities, and like where would I go? Like diet stopped working. I used to be able to be very, very good, but when I was or very, very bad, I wasn't like Mae West. When I'm very, very bad, I'm even better. I mean, it was just really scary. I ate driving. I mean, one time, well, actually more than one time, I started choking when I'm driving, because I had to get my stash or I had to clean out my car. It's like I'll never eat in my car again. Never, never, never until the next time. And I was just like my father, who was the alcoholic. I made all these false promises to myself. So my life was very, very small. And I had that glimmer of hope, I think that that's what kept me alive. And there's somebody in this room that came into Gray Sheet, and I said, I'll never, never, never do that because that Gray Sheet looks so sad. This looks really sad. This is for carbohydrate sensitive people, man-made sugars and starches create a craving for more of the same. Like I knew the first step, I am powerless over food. My life is unmanageable. I knew the unmanageable part, but I really struggled with the powerlessness. And especially even in OA, like I would get into these AWOLs because they said, you have to do work the steps, you have to do this, but I could never stay in the AWOLs because I ate. But I was like, can't we like spend like a year doing that? Because it was like that surrender, that first surrender, I am powerless over food, like I need a sponsor. I need a food plan, I need to commit my food daily, I need that, the mantra, I didn't want to do it. And I love it, that's my security, I say 3 times a day, I get my baba. And someone told me they don't like that, that is, and I'm like, well, that's okay for them. It's like 3 times a day, I'm physically, emotionally, and spiritually fed. I plan, prepare, I protect my food. But I didn't want this, it used to be poor me, poor me. I've got the worst characteristics of both my parents. And you know, and and I'm like the only one in my family that is in a 12-step program. And the miracle is I stayed, even though I mean I had a million sponsors in regular OA. And one time I came in and I had broken my absence, but somebody saw me, and because she was a normal weight, I was a normal weight. She called on me to speak, and I'm like, just can I tell her, or going out to the supermarket and I having to get my stash and seeing somebody I knew and having to hide out or go to another supermarket. This is such a shame-based disease because I want to hide from it. And just recently, I've been thinking a lot. Well, I was single most of my life, or in bad relationships with men that were charming but unavailable, little like my father, and I settled for so little, and I got absent. I came into Gray Sheet in 2003, so I came into the rooms about 32. So I've been in a food fellowship, weighing and measuring my food first with exception for 11 and a half years, another little over a year, so 13 years of struggling, and then getting that incredible gift of abstinence. And I got abstinent. The day I got abstinent was the day my boyfriend broke up with me, which is probably the best thing in my life because I made him my higher power, and I put more energy. Well, anyways, it was a freedom, and I cried a boatload of tears. And I had done all this stuff before and I'd done therapy and I've always been shut down with feelings. And I remember hearing somebody say, well, nobody ever died over a feeling. And I don't know. And I learned that like I can feel everything
That's
and
10.
not die. And so that first year I chop shopped and cried. And and that was cathartic because I had a lot of losses in my life. My father died when I was 13. He took his life. My mother died when I was 27. She had lung cancer. She worshiped thinness and she was a smoker. We didn't do great. I know how to shut down and be depressed. Like I can do that. And then when I got the food down, it's like, oh my God, I have to feel everything. And so losing the weight, my highest weight was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. Well, actually a little bit more. And that was in 1998. And when I came into Gray Sheet, I was about 20 pounds. And it doesn't matter what the numbers are. I mean, I was just as crazy, probably crazier. And I had heard people do things that I hadn't tried yet. And I wanted to eat everything in sight. I could have been eating toilet paper. And I know somebody who actually did that. I just needed that hand to mouth, that numbing out. I mean, my head was a very, very noisy place, and I would always be obsessing over some stupid boy, which I did that way too much or some mistake I made at work or something or some big fear, and there was just all this chatter in my head. And when I got abstinent, it quieted down. I mean, not, there are times when my neighbor, it's a little noisy, and I can't turn the volume down, but it's like, okay, I can pause. I can make a phone call. I can do something else. Like that was all I could do. Today, I'm married. I did the online dating thing, which is relationships are tough, being honest with another person. Um, finding somebody who's gray sheet worthy. I have very challenging relationships with two of my sisters, my brother who was my bestie, and a really good my love and support. I'm sorry. Had a lot of physical issues and cognitive decline and with dementia, and I was able to be there for him and go out in California and just really love him and feel that love and that intensity and to feel the grief and to also feel like I've been given this gift. Like it sucks that he's not alive and he died at 71. But he lived a really full life and he gave me all these gifts, just like I feel like I've gotten gifts from all of you, and before it was like, poor me, like I'm not good enough, and I'm just your average addict. I am enough. I have enough. I want more. Physically, so that's physical. The emotional is learning how to deal with my feelings. The whole battery, the ups, highs, and lows. I got laid off. I was at the New York Roundup when that happened. That protected me. I went to what I thought was a recovery job, which was just as crazy. Now I'm retired, which is even the best thing around. So I can't, I know friends of mine are scared to get retired. I was like, I don't even know how I had time to work. I just came back from 8 days in California. I got to a meeting there. I did some Zoom meetings while I was away, and to know that people all over the world are doing what we do, now with Zoom. I mean, people all over the world, any time zone, we can reach somebody else. They say that for longevity and connection, that people need a purpose, social networks, they need other people. When I was in the food, it was like, poor me living alone with my cat, I'm going to die. And she's a little piglet and, she'll probably start eating me, and nobody will find me, and today,
1 minute.
I have I have a sponsor, I have sponsees, I talk to people regularly, I'm accountable, right now, I think I'm a little bit overscheduled, and I'm like a slug, and I'm like, I have a full life today, when I was in the food, like I thought that scale, having to bring it into a restaurant was going to really hamper my life, but it's given me so much freedom. And, everything I need to know, I feel like I learned in Gray Sheet and I learned from you and program and from my grandson who's 5. And, I think to not take myself too seriously. That was something I heard early on, like a guy in program. He said, people in OA, they take themselves seriously and their disease lightly. And, the people in AA take their disease seriously and themselves lightly. And I think we do that too in Gray Sheet, it's AA for food, this is an effing disease, and it's progressive, but so is recovery. And thanks. It's really been a treat. And thank you for letting me share.